All right, so in terms of the case setup, the first thing you want to do, or the first thing I always do, is I verify the accuracy of the scans in the bite. And first and foremost, I, verify that the scans are the right scans for the patient. There are times where, you're loading them into the scanner using the wrong name. So now the scan is attached to a different name. You might have patients in your office with the same name, and you get it mixed up. And when you go to load the case, it's actually the scans of another patient, not the patient that you need. So you always want to verify that it is the proper scans. You also want to check for, things like spacing. Make sure the bite comes together like it's supposed to, because if you start moving the teeth and the information is inadequate or inaccurate from the beginning, you're not going to get to where you want to go. So the first thing is you want to, again, just verify that all of the information that you have put into uDesign is accurate. The second thing that I do after I verify that everything is good and where it needs to be, I use guided setup to do a lot of the global gross movements. So I'm coordinating the arches. I'm getting the initial alignment out, about 95% of it out of the way. I'm leveling curves of speed, intruding teeth, all of the big movements that I want to get out of it. And you'll see through the AI, through guided setup, it makes this process extremely easy and extremely fast. And so again, I'm just mainly focusing on where I want to put the teeth, because before I start moving any teeth, I sit down and I figure out where I want the teeth to be. So if that's, I want to intrude the anterior teeth, I want to extrude the posterior teeth, or vice versa, or if I want to expand versus constrict, whatever it is, I kind of have that mapped out already, and then I use guided setups to do some of those big movements. After I've used guided setup for the majority of the work, I'll go back in and individually do the final tweaking and the final details and any overcorrection that I may want to do as well. And then probably the most important part is I'll go back and stage the case. So after I have everything right where it needs to be, I have the final tooth positions where they need to be, and I have done all of my overcorrections. The next step is to stage it, because if you can, stage it properly, that is going to give you the best opportunity to get the outcome that you're looking for. And you can get the final tooth positions where you want them to be. But if you don't have good staging, you will never get there. And then after I, have everything where I want to be, have the overcorrections and everything set up, I have everything staged out to avoid collisions, I now go in and put the attachments on, and I'm ready to go. And it's this systematic, process that I follow that allows me to move through it a lot easier and a lot faster. Okay, so the first step is, setting up or verifying the accuracy. And again, I just look at it from all of the different angles. The buccal shots, I look at it from the occlusal, just to verify that one, it's the right patient, and two, that, the scan data, represents what it's supposed to represent. And then I'll have the pictures pulled up next to me so I can, again, go back and forth just to verify that it is indeed correct. Next, we're going to do guided setup. And like I said, this is what I use for the majority of the big movements and the global movements. And so you can see how with one click, it handled all the alignment that I needed to do. I'm able to expand the buccal segments extremely easy. Same thing in the lower, able to get the alignment taken care of, expand, whether it's proclination or uprighting. And then next I'll go in and kind of set the vertical positions of the teeth that I like it to be in. And in this case, it was mainly in the lower. If it was the upper, I would do it in the upper as well. And again, I'm not overly concerned with the alignment of the teeth at this point. I just want to make sure, hey, do I have the arches coordinated? Have I opened the bite like I want it to? And that's pretty much all I want to get out of the guided setup. Next, I'm going to go back in, and now we're going to go back in and do all that fine tweaking and just getting everything right where it needs to be. And one thing I'll say too is, the way I typically will do a setup after I've done the guided setup and I'm going in and doing these, final tweaks and final detailing, is I'll get it in what I would consider ideal first, and then go back to 0. So I'll slide the little ticker back to 0 to get to the initial. and look for any teeth that or anything that needs to be overcorrected. So if there's any severe rotations, if there's, an open bite that I want to overtreat or a deep bite that I want to, overdo, I'll go back and add that in at the back end. And the reason I do it that way is if you do the overcorrection from the beginning, so let's say you say, I look at this case and, I know I want to rotate the meso in by an extra 2 degrees or whatever it is. And in your initial setup, you do that. Sometimes you get what I call lost in the sauce and the setup just looks wonky. The teeth look like they don't fit together well. And mentally, it just kind of throws you off a little bit. And so what I do is I get it to ideal, go back to the initial, check for anything that I need to overcorrect, and then I'll do the overcorrection. So at this point, if it looks weird, if it looks off, I know it's okay because I know it's overcorrection or over engineering that I have placed into the setup, and it doesn't trip my mind as much. And so that's just a little tidbit on how I like to do it. And so just get it ideal first, and then go back and do the overcorrections. So at this point, we've done the global movements in terms of opening the bite, in terms of expansion, the initial alignment. And we've gone back in and done some fine details just to kind of get everything right where we want it to be, and then did whatever overcorrections that we needed to do. And then next is the staging. And in this case, there wasn't anything in particular that I needed to stage out that severely, but I did want to make sure I avoided any collisions. And so what I'll do is this auto stage feature, and essentially it's staging, but in a different way. And what I mean by that is it just makes sure when you get from point A to point B in your setup that you don't have collisions along the way, which is essentially for the majority of the cases is what you need. We do have the advanced option of, not moving a tooth until you move this tooth, or, expand and create space before you rotate. And I'll show some of that in some of the examples that we are going to go through today. But if you don't need any of that per se, I get everything right where I need to be, and I will hit the auto stage and just let it get rid of any collisions that I may have. Now, I will go back and I'll go from 0 to the end and verify that there aren't any collisions. Because again, if there's saliva or spit in your scan, or it's something that's a little off, it may not represent itself truly when you use the auto stage feature. So always go back and just verify and make sure that I have space around the teeth as I am aligning them up. Another thing that I don't know if you guys saw, but what I'll do is, so if you look here, we have 10 stages in the upper, 16 in the lower. A lot of times I'll just hit this little upper and lower equal sign to just give the same amount of aligners, just to keep things simple. Now, if it is a huge discrepancy, like one of the cases I'm going to show between the upper and the lower, I will keep it lopsided and just create a retainer for keep a retainer for the arch that has the least amount of aligners in it. But if it's within, anywhere 4 to 6 aligner difference, I'll just make it even, just for, again, simplicity reasons. All right, so now that we, have everything set up, we have everything staged out. Now it's time to add the attachments. I use my predetermined protocol, which is the standard, which is what I use for about 90% of my cases. And that's typically, I'll add attachments on the 2s, 4s, and 6s. And on this case, she was missing premolars, so they put it on the 5s and the 6. So I took it off because I didn't need it, because those teeth are right next to each other. But typically in the upper arch is the laterals, the first premolars, and the molars. And then in the lower, I'll typically do the 6, 5, and 4s. And that's, again, about 90% of the cases that I treat use those same attachments. And these are the ones that I use. And I'll kind of hit on some of the attachments in, throughout the presentation. But this is the basic general setup. And so being able to have that protocol already dialed in, and all I have to do is go in and tweak the sizes of the attachments, it makes putting those on so much easier. You can classify it, by deep bite, open bite, and all that kind of stuff, to make this part of the process so much easier. And I can tell you, being a user back when it first came out, and, having to add attachment one by one on every single case, especially when I was using the same attachments on the same teeth, it was a bit tedious. So to be able to click one button and then allow it to automatically generate on those teeth is huge. The other thing that I like to point out or talk about is I like to adjust the attachments on 0. So a lot of times when we come into the attachment part, it's at the final stage and that we're looking at when we're adjusting the attachments, but I like to take it back to 0 just to make sure that I'm avoiding any interferences and that we're not biting on any of the attachments if I can avoid it. Sometimes you can't avoid it. A lot of times you can. So that's another key component when you're adjusting these attachments is make sure you're at the initial stage when you're setting that up just to, again, make sure you're avoiding any interferences.